Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're skipping the usual agenda and diving headfirst into the emotional core of a really powerful Father's Day homily delivered by Father Jowel Jomarsus Gatus. We're going to be exploring a deeply human experience, how we actually find strength when the world around us feels like it's just falling apart.
Let me ask you a question right off the bat. Who is with you in the storm? Really think about that for a second. When your life suddenly gets turbulent, when the bad news hits, when the stress mounts at work, when literally everything seems to be going wrong, how do you react? And honestly, more importantly, who do you look to? Keep that question right in the back of your mind as we unpack this profound message. Section 1. Strength from the Father, the foundation of the home. Okay, let's dive into this. The homily begins by examining the role of fathers as the foundational pillars of our lives and our homes. Father Gatus notes that a genuinely good earthly father actually reflects the heart of God. He provides the strength to protect his family, the humility to serve them, and the love to forgive them. But to really wrap our heads around this concept of drawing strength from a father, the homily shares an absolutely incredible story from the world of sports. It tells the story of Laila Ali, the world champion boxer. During one particularly brutal match, Laila found herself totally outmatched. Her opponent was just fierce. As the rounds dragged on, Laila was taking hit after heavy hit. Her eyebrow was cut open, she was bleeding, exhausted, and cornered against the ropes. It looked to literally everyone in that arena like she was about to lose. And this is exactly what it feels like when life's problems relentlessly beat us down and back us into a corner, right? We've all been there, gasping for air, just ready to throw in the towel.
But here is the massive turning point. Later, when reporters asked how she managed to turn that fight around, Laila explained that while she was stuck in that corner, breathless and in pain, a sudden memory flashed in her mind. She remembered her father, and not just any father, Muhammad Ali. She remembered watching him get cornered by legendary fighters, only to somehow fight his way out and win. She told herself, "I am the daughter of Muhammad Ali. The blood of a champion flows in me. If my dad could do it, I can do it too." Remembering her father's identity gave her this unexplained surge of strength to break out of that corner and win the whole thing. The takeaway? When you remember who your father is, it gives you the strength to keep fighting.
Section 2. God in Trials, from human flaws to divine perfection. Now, as inspiring as that is, the homily points out a vital reality. Earthly fathers are our earthly pillars, yes, for sure, but they are human. They have limitations, they make mistakes, and sometimes, sadly, they even cause pain. The message here smoothly pivots from the earthly fathers we know to introducing the concept of a heavenly father who has absolutely zero limits.
And this brilliantly illustrates the difference. Earthly fathers, no matter how hard they try, they get tired, they make mistakes, their strength is fundamentally limited. But Father Gatus contrasts this with the Heavenly Father, who never tires, who never loses, and whose strength is totally infinite. The homily reassures us that when human fathers fall short, you don't need to lose heart. Why? Because you have a Heavenly Father who is completely perfect and entirely undefeated. And the speaker doesn't just toss this claim out there without backing it up. He points to a proven historical track record. We're talking parting the Red Sea, bringing down the impenetrable walls of Jericho, saving Daniel from a den of hungry lions, and ultimately resurrecting Jesus from death itself. The logic here is incredibly comforting. Think about it. If God won these massive, impossible historical battles in the past, he is more than capable of handling whatever struggles are beating you down today.
Section 3. Trust during the storm, the core message. This brings us to the absolute core focus of today's explainer. How do we actually apply this trust during our own modern-day crises? Because, while it's one thing to look at a historical timeline, it's a completely different thing to actually live through the turbulence.
To illustrate this, Father Gatus shares another really vivid story. Imagine you're on a commercial airplane. Suddenly, the plane hits severe turbulence. The wind is howling, the cabin is shaking violently, the wings look like they might literally snap off. Panic sets in everywhere. Passengers are sweating, gripping their armrests, praying out loud. But right in the middle of this terrifying chaos, there's a little boy. And what is he doing? He is just calmly sitting there, smiling, playing a game on his iPad, completely unbothered by the storm raging outside. An older man sitting next to him is just bewildered and asks the kid, "Son, aren't you scared?"
The boy simply smiles and gives this profoundly simple answer. "I am not scared because my dad is the pilot." This right here is the emotional peak of the homily's message. True peace during a crisis doesn't come from the absence of a storm. No, it comes entirely from knowing exactly who is flying your plane.
If you know the pilot loves you and is in total control, you can actually sit back and weather the turbulence.
So the crucial point is this. Trusting God doesn't mean your problems just magically disappear. Having faith doesn't mean the airplane stops shaking, but it completely changes your focus. If you spend all your time staring out the window at the storm, obsessing over the bad news, the bills, the illness, it breeds fear and panic. But if you look at the Father, if you remember who is in control, it builds faith and it builds calm.
As Father Gatus powerfully states, faith starts where fear ends. The homily advises us to intentionally flip our perspective. When fear starts creeping in, it's a huge warning signal that we've taken our eyes off the pilot and started staring at the storm again. By consciously remembering the power and the love of the Heavenly Father, we can absolutely conquer our anxieties.
Section 4. Fight for your family, an earthly calling. The homily then brings this massive divine lesson right back down to earth. Because truly understanding God's fatherhood fundamentally changes how earthly fathers are called to act. They are called to emulate God's relentless protection and care for their own families.
And here is exactly how they are instructed to do it. The homily lays out very clear steps. Fathers must fight for their homes by fighting against vice, fighting against temptation, and fighting against fear and anger. Father Galenus passionately emphasizes this profound rule. A man who fights for his family blesses them, but a man who fights against his family through anger, shouting, or abuse curses them and destroys the peace of the home. Earthly fathers don't have to be perfect, they just have to be willing to be the champion for their family, much like God is a champion for us.
To really drive this point home, he shares this deeply touching anecdote about a mechanic. This man works all day out in the blistering heat. He's exhausted, his hands are covered in grease, his clothes are ruined. While he's working, his 7-year-old daughter runs up to him. She's dressed up like a princess for her birthday party, wearing this little crown, and she twirls around and asks, "Daddy, am I beautiful?" Seeing her, the exhausted mechanic just begins to cry. He realizes in that split second exactly why he works so hard, why he endures all the heat and the grease. It isn't for money or status, it's entirely out of pure, sacrificial love for his daughter. The homily uses this beautiful image to show that a loving earthly father's sacrifice mirrors God's tireless, endless work for us every single day.
Section 5. Gratitude and love. Reflecting heaven. Let's move to and see how this builds into the final takeaway of the source material. Once we realize how deeply we are loved, both by our good earthly fathers and our perfect heavenly Father, how are we supposed to respond? What's the practical application of all this gratitude?
Well, the answer provided is incredibly practical. The homily teaches that the absolute best way to thank God is not just through words, but through your actions right inside your own home. You show gratitude by being a great, loving person to your family, by being a loving parent, an obedient child, a supportive sibling, and by consciously choosing to fill your home with peace. Grateful people are loving people.
Which brings us to our final, provocative thought for this explainer. Is your home a reflection of heaven? If you want to experience heaven, the source material argues it starts by loving better right where you live. By remembering who your ultimate father is, trusting the pilot during the massive turbulence of life, and letting that profound peace totally transform the way you treat the people under your own roof. Think about that the next time you face a storm. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep focusing, and I'll catch you next time.